All right, I'd like to pick up this lecture, this second lecture of Unit 10, by beginning with the end of the Peloponnesian War. And as we saw in the previous lecture, after the Sicilian expedition, the Athenians show amazing resiliency and managed to hang in there for 9 years, from 413 to 404, and plenty of twists and turns as the action shifts away from Sicily into the Aegean in what becomes known as the Ionian phase of the war. We also note that ultimately the Spartans are able to successfully challenge Athenian naval power in the Aegean by forming a unholy alliance with the Persians. And the terms of the agreement, it won't be a formal treaty until a little later on, but around 412, the terms of the agreement that the Spartans strike with the governors, the satraps, the Persian satraps of Asia Minor, uh, will allow Persian capital, Persian funds to be used by the Spartans to construct a fleet and then successfully challenge the Athenians. What the Persians are looking for in return is basically a return to the status quo that existed when the Persians controlled Ionia. So basically, what the Persians are looking for is to reassert control over these Greek city-states along the Ionian coast. Um, this puts Sparta in a tough position because Sparta, all along, from the moment the Peloponnesian conflict breaks out, declares its intentions to free the Greeks. By that they mean free the members of the Delian League, which included the Ionian city-states, from Athenian domination. And now, in effect, what the Spartans are more or less tacitly agreeing to is a return to Persian domination of the Ionian coast. So it really is kind of a case of making a deal with the devil in order to achieve your strategic goals. And we saw how the Spartans, led by the Navarch or Admiral Lysander, are able to successfully bring the war to a conclusion by defeating the Athenians at Aigos And with this, Lysander will impose a tyranny, the 30 tyrants, on Athens, but that won't last very long, less than a year. By 403, the democracy is restored at Athens, and that will have other implications a little later on. What I want to do is, hopefully without disrupting the flow of the narrative, is talk about a moment in 401 BC that's going to have huge implications for future events. And that is what becomes known as the March of the 10,000. And just to give you some background, we can imagine that in 404 BC, with the end of the Peloponnesian War, you've had an entire generation of Greeks basically raised in wartime conditions, knowing nothing but war. Remember, the Peloponnesian conflict will go on for 27 years, so most of these Greek men are born into war, and that becomes their craft. They, in effect, don't know what to do with themselves after the Peloponnesian War is ended. It's hard to reintegrate back into a civilian lifestyle. So what many of these men will do is hire themselves out as mercenaries. And we know that the Persian Empire has very deep pockets, able to pay for large numbers of mercenaries. And in the year 401, 10,000 Greeks are hired by the younger brother, Cyrus, of the Persian great king, Artaxerxes. Cyrus wants the throne for himself, and he knows that he's going to need a military force to achieve this goal. So Cyrus, who is the governor of the Western Asian provinces of the Persian Empire, basically begins quietly putting together an army built out of Greek mercenaries. And what he plans to do is meet his brother Artaxerxes on the battlefield, kill him, and then take control of the Persian Empire. So we get this force of about 13,000 Greeks assembled at Sardis and then march inland. Now, we know a lot about this expedition of the Greek mercenaries into the Persian Empire because along for the ride was the Athenian Xenophon, who is one of our primary sources of this moment in Greek history. After Thucydides and his account of the Peloponnesian War breaks off in 411, Xenophon is one of the sources that's relied upon to take the story from 411 down to 362. And of course, Xenophon, like Thucydides, witnessed a lot of the events that he wrote about. And in particular, he wrote an account of this expedition of the 10,000 Greek mercenaries called the Anabasis, or the March Up Country. And Xenophon, initially along as kind of an observer, will play a crucial role as the story unfolds. So let's get back to the story with kind of a note that the Spartan government, although pledged not to officially involve itself in Asia Minor and the internal affairs of the Persian Empire, we can imagine that the Spartan government kind of gave the green light to so many Spartans and Peloponnesians participating in this expedition. A lot of these mercenaries were Spartan, were Peloponnesian. And so this is an unofficial way for the Spartan government to kind of really roil up domestic affairs within the Persian Empire and, keep the Persians off balance. And I mean, if we want to kind of look at this in a contemporary sense, these 10,000 Greek mercenaries would be something along the lines of security contractors. We've all heard of Blackwater and other private security firms that are prominent nowadays. It is a way for governments to accomplish foreign policy goals without actually involving national assets. They can kind of hire mercenaries to do the work. I imagine that this was a similar case back in 401. So anyway, the 10,000 mercenaries in support of the young prince Cyrus march deep into the heart of the Persian Empire, where they will confront a Persian army led by the great king Artaxerxes at the Battle of Cunaxa. And you have, if you can see my cursor, this is roughly where Cunaxa is. And you have this battle fought in which the Greeks give a good account of themselves, but unfortunately for them, a young prince Cyrus decides to lead a charge when he spots his older brother. He tries to kill him in one-on-one combat, and it is the young prince Cyrus who is killed. So these 10,000 or so Greek mercenaries suddenly find themselves deep in the heart of the Persian Empire without their paymaster to pay them. And Artaxerxes invites the leaders of the 10,000 for a parley, but then treacherously has them murdered. So now these mercenaries, about 10,000, are deep in the heart of the Persian Empire and without leaders. And what do? Well, they do what all Greeks do. They sit down, have a debate, and decide what to do, and that involves electing new leaders, new generals. And it so happens that Xenophon, the historian, will be elected as one of these generals. And the policy that they set for themselves is to march up country, march north, until they can get back into the Greek area. And so they basically walk through much of the Persian Empire, getting involved in skirmishes along the way until they reach the Black Sea. And the high point of Xenophon's account is when the Greeks see the sea, they joyously yell out, "The sea, the sea." And then they promptly make it back to Greek territory, and many of them will then join a Spartan expedition that is being organized just at that moment to head back into Asia. So again, they just can't get enough of the fighting. And the importance of this expedition, this Anabasis, will kind of echo throughout generations of Greeks until Philip II of Macedonia and his son Alexander will be much impressed at what a Greek army, relatively small force, could do against the Persians. Again, the Persians do not look like they're very strong if it seems that a Greek army can march wherever it wants, whenever it wants, in the Persian Empire. All right, so with the successful return of the 10,000 back into the Greek mainland, they give a report back to the Spartan government. And it's at this moment that I want to introduce you to one of the key figures who will dominate events for much of the rest of this unit, and that is King Agesilaus II. Agesilaus II is interesting on a number of levels. He was not supposed to succeed to the throne, but if you remember, the reigning monarch, King Agus, one of the two Spartan kings, King Agus, Alcibiades will impregnate his wife, and the son born of this union will be considered suspect as far as being able to inherit the throne. Agesilaus was a younger son and therefore was not expected to take the throne, and further darkening his chances was the fact that he was born lame. He had one leg was shorter than the other, and of course it's because he was born of the royal family that he was not killed as an infant. Evidently there was an exemption there, and usually those Spartans who were designated as heirs to the throne did not have to go through the agoge system, that brutal system of training these young boys to be warriors. But because Agesilaus was not supposed to succeed to the throne, and even though he was lame, he went through the agoge, and evidently he acquitted himself quite well. It's a case where somebody really does overcome perceived physical limitations. And you must imagine what that must have done to him psychologically. I mean, this guy must have had a will of steel. So anyway, Agesilaus, who was also mentored by Lysander, that Spartan navarch that we looked at as being the architect of Spartan victory in the Peloponnesian War. Agesilaus will be mentored by Lysander, and shortly after coming to the throne, there is a question as to whether an oracle reports that Sparta should watch out for a lame king. And initially everybody looks at Agesilaus as being, potentially this lame king. But Lysander steps up and says, no, 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 what the oracle is talking about is the illegitimate king, the boy who was born of the union between Alcibiades and Agus's wife. That's what the oracle means by lame king. And everybody's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And Agesilaus is then allowed to succeed to the throne. Shortly after assuming the title of king, Agesilaus, on the advice of Lysander, will kind of renege on the terms of the Spartan-Persian treaty and will begin to make moves towards freeing the Greeks of Asia Minor. He sends an army into Ionia, but that makes little progress in 400. But he's not ready to give up on the deal, so he in 396 decides that he himself will lead a Spartan army into Asia Minor, and this was very unusual. So in 396, with the intention of freeing the Greeks of Ionia from Persian domination, he will campaign there. Now, the Persians, as we've just seen with this whole March of the 10,000 episode, by 395, militarily, they are not considered that formidable, but of course they do have deep pockets. They have lots of wealth. They use this wealth to foment rebellion back in Greece. Sparta is the hegemon, the dominator of mainland Greece at this moment in time, but there are a lot of Greek poleis, particularly Corinth, Thebes, Athens, and Argos, who are not satisfied with this state of affairs. So with a little Persian money, actually a lot of Persian money, and the promise of naval support, these four poleis, Corinth, Thebes, Athens, and Argos, begin to rebel against the Spartan hegemony, or domination. And the situation gets so serious that Agesilaus is forced to call it quits in Asia Minor and return to Greece to deal with this crisis. And this will lead to what's called the Corinthian War, which, as you can see from my brackets here, my timeline here, is going to go on for some time, from 395 to 386. And again, it will involve Sparta against Corinth, Thebes, Athens, and Argos, some major city-states, which are going to be backed up by Persian gold and Persian naval assets. So again, Persia is getting in the mix here as a means of basically self-preservation, trying to keep the Greeks busy fighting themselves so they won't turn on the Persian Empire. In 386, after kind of sporadic fighting, the Persian king will broker a peace called the King's Peace in 386. This is implemented after Sparta agrees that it will no longer involve itself in Asia Minor. And basically, the Ionian Greeks are brought back under Persian mastery. So this is where affairs will stand, but you better believe that Agesilaus has a very long memory. And in particular, he focuses on the city-state of Thebes as being the instigator of this Corinthian war. And Thebes itself had been flexing its muscle lately, so Sparta recognizes that Thebes looks as if it will be the main challenger to Spartan hegemony or Spartan dominance of the Greek mainland. And Agesilaus is going to focus on doing what he can to limit the influence of Thebes and to, whenever possible, punish Thebes for causing all this trouble. And that's where you and I are going to be turning next to a period which will bring Sparta and Thebes into conflict and ultimately will result in the destruction of Spartan power in the Greek mainland.